Well, that's the end of the season reached, and we are here once again to discuss another very quiet week in Welsh rugby. I'll give you a heads up now. If you're listening to this and you're driving the kids to school, you might want to put it on pause and come back to it when there's no kids around. It may well get that sort of show this evening. So let's get on with it. Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the WRRAP podcast with me, Lee G. Joining me, as per usual, are three co-hosts from the feeder pods, which is probably the easiest way to describe it this evening. So Harley down in the bottom corner there, as per usual. Good evening, Harley.
Evening.
And up the top there, I've got Dan, who will be taking over from Jamie next season. Evening, Dan.
Evening, gentlemen.
And down in the bottom corner, we've got Josh from the Ospreys Irie, and I can say that because Nick's not here. Evening, Josh.
Ospreys Erie, yeah, good to be here.
He's got you boys well trained. He's got. So Nick's been out in South Africa and was planning on being with us tonight, but he met the Scarlets in the departure lounge and realised that he wasn't worthy. So he's come back with a bit of a cold and a bit of a cough and a bit of all sorts of stuff. So he's having a bit of time to recover, is Nick. But he'll be back next week. Jamie will be back next week, and we'll go from there. So we're going to have a bit of a change around the format this evening because unless you've been living under a rock for the last 48 hours, then you know what the big news is. So we are, first and foremost, we are a rugby podcast. That's what we set ourselves up to do, is to talk about rugby openly and honestly and with passion and as supporters. So, tonight I wanted to change it around tonight because I want to make sure we talk about the rugby first, and we do the justice first. The last weekend of the season, there were some cracking games, whichever way the result went. It was a cracking game over the weekend. So I wanted to make sure we cover that bit first, and then we'll cover the news and the other bits later. But what I also wanted to say is that there's so much stuff going around at the minute, so much stuff on social media and news and this and you just don't know who to believe and all of that. So we're a fans podcast. We're all fans. Anybody that comes on here is a fan. We're not funded by clubs. We're not funded by the WRU. We're not funded by the BBC, which was one suggestion we had a while ago. We make what we can off YouTube, and that pays for our subscription to run a podcast. So we're going to give you our honest opinion tonight, and that's all it is it's our honest opinion about what's going on and the bits of knowledge that we've got, and the message that I guess that we're giving to you is that we're here as fans. So just keep that in mind when we're going through it. We're here as fans, and we want to hear from fans. We're a voice piece for fans. Okay, so that kind of sets up the bit at the end, but we're going to talk about rugby first. So, Harley, you were first off the block on Friday night, sitting kind of pretty-ish going into it, and then you kicked off. So you take us through the game on Friday, mate.
I don't know where to begin. It's been a bit of a story of our seasons and seasons past. We, big game. We had a lot riding on it. We needed the win, and we just couldn't handle the Stormers. We couldn't handle the Stormers pack physically. They were battling through us, this thing, and then the backs got the ball, and we were left running around in circles. I think what showed was there were a lot of players who had far too many minutes. Like Cam Winnett looked like a zombie on his feet. Bless it. Other players like Josh McNally is just basically being ground into a fine paste, the amount of work we've been giving him. And let's say, look at him, you just almost got a bit starstruck sometimes with the speed the Storms are playing at. I mean, we topped a few stats, but ones that matter, things like clean breaks, the number of times we actually got into the 22, Stormers were doubling us up on them. And I mean, it didn't help that we conceded a red card so early on, which 100% red card is. I'm not even going to debate arguing either of them. But it left then Corey Domachowski, who's been on sort of one leg the last few games, to try and hobble through 60, 70 minutes when he probably shouldn't have because of just because we've had a bit of. I said, although Cardiff never had too many injuries in one go, they've always been all in one area. But at the moment, it's all off props. So we've had the same two front rows going back and forth because they're all picking up nickels. But just depressing. And then looking at the overall season stats, we're 15th for attack, so we're only just above the Dragons. We're 6th dead last for discipline, kicking with 5th, which sort of says more about the game plan. We were going for kicking in defence, but the problem is our kick meters are right down there, even though we're on the top for kicks. We are the first for tries from kicks, so that's a positive. But yeah, discipline let us down. I mean, just the scrum just ended up on skates again, as I mentioned. Some very tired boys, and I think there was at least one Stormers try where the boys just went, and that was and just let them through. That said, there was some nice touches, but overall disappointing. A season when we probably should have made the playoffs, but look through. Although there's one interesting little tidbit that got released by CF10. So from Steve, who's occasionally on the Cardiff Central pod, only 94 of Cardiff's 400 odd points were scored from kicks. And once you take out the six penalties we scored, that works out that our conversions, so just conversion kicks, we're just over 60% success, which is it's just not good enough. But, for a player who came back to Wales for international ambitions to be the goal kicker, to be 10 goal kicker, it just isn't. Well, I mean, the hilarious thing is, as soon as it got given to someone else, they couldn't kick either. So we got a bit screwed there. It's not a huge amount to say. I mean, I'm proud of the effort the boys have done. It was a lot better than last season, but there's still an awful long way to go. The only bit of pride I've got is I predicted we'd finish 9th in pre-season, and that's the joy I'm taking out of it, really.
Okay, right. Well, on the upside, mate, you've got Yo and Lloyd coming next year, who I think has got their best kick percentage off the tee so far this year. So, yay.
And with an actual proper attack coach, he might learn, even if we don't seem to be doing that much attack anymore.
Oh, well, you have your extra week on the beach while the rest of us will carry on trying to play in the playoffs, Ali. So I was trying to be kind, but if you want to do it, if you want to bring it that way.
I mean, a week on the beach will be ground into a fine paste by a very angry Leinster side. I know what I'd rather.
Okay, so general feeling of fans then at the end of the season, the kind of the end of season. Is it up? Is it down? Is it better than expected?
I think it is a bit quite measured. I mean, all the other stuff, off-field stuff, we will eventually get onto. This is hampering it, but I think a lot of people are quite positive of where the club is going. I mean, the administration stuff's just been absolutely all right, but it's nice to see that we had issues last season. We've gotten better at them. A lot of those narrow losses we've turned into wins. What I think the problem is we've converted more tight games into wins, but we've also been blown away a lot more this season. So as I mentioned last week, we either seem to we either squeak by with a win or we get blown out of the water. I think there's a fatigue in there. I think I understand point out that I can't remember if it was on the pod or if it was when we were off air that we probably could do with another 13 and a fullback because as great a job as Miller's tried and done, and as amazing as Ray Lilo are, it is pretty. We've shown it only takes one injury and we're really struggling. And so Cam Winter just looks completely dead. And I think he's top. I think he was far and away the top number of minutes played before the South Africa tour.
How old is Lilo now?
Oh,
104.
300. Yeah, I was going to say 398. I think he's 38.
Blimey. Yeah.
And
He's,
he's still doing it better than a lot of the young guns.
I take my hat off to him to still be doing it at that age. That's top draw.
yeah. I'd already retired 3 times by the time I got to 38. I'd retired from the vets by the time I got to 38. Right.
They should Grady back next year to cover 13. Him and Millard.
Yeah, I said I think it's one of the things we discussed with on Central is with Grady. If we do see him as a 13 long term, I think we've just got to take the paint and get him minutes in there. We can't be just sticking him out on the wing.
Yeah.
With game plans just because he needs to learn the position.
Yeah,
you can't really do that from wing.
Yeah, you might not have much choice next season.
I have a lot of choice with a lot of things next season.
Right. So that was Friday night in Harley. And then we started Saturday with, I mean, I'm wanting to say enthusiasm and positivity, Dan, but it disappeared fairly. Normally, Dragons will come out and give a good 15, 20 minutes, and then it'll start to turn to shit. Didn't quite work that way on Saturday. Your thoughts on the game?
Oh, well, look, the Dragons have been the worst regional side by a long stretch, worst team in the league this season by a long stretch, aren't they? It's as simple as that. We're as good as Zebra, let alone anyone else in the league. So, yeah, unfortunately, it was another tough away loss. What was it, 55-15? I will put a rider on this. I was listening to the boys on Dragons Lair this morning. We got 22 on the injured list. Any squad in the world is going to struggle with you got 22 frontline players out, let alone the Dragons or anyone in Welsh rugby, really, when you got such a thin squad in general. The fact that we had to go to Carmarthen Quins and bring in Lewis Morgan and Jamie Hughes said it all, really, didn't it? Because my understanding was that they didn't want to go and disrupt too much of the SRC final preparations with Ebervale and Newport. Fair enough, good on them, because it was a nothing game, really, for the Dragons, wasn't it? But yeah, 55-15. There's not a lot more to say other than the fact we were overpowered, outpaced, outgunned. It's a shame, really, that we didn't pick up that fourth try. That would have been nice, but even Stevie Wonder could see that pass was forward. It didn't need to go to the TMO, did it, for Ashton Hewitt? Would have been nice for him to sign off, wouldn't it, with a try to finish? But the scrum went back. We struggle for gain line all the time. Our defence is passive. We keep saying the same things over and over again. Similar to Harley, we haven't had a goal kicker all season. We look at 0 from 3 on the weekend. Those stats are just not good enough. Tinas De Beers come in, as we all know, into the Dragons, but whether that's the answer on the goal kick in front, I'm unsure. So, yeah, watch this space. There's not much more to say, really, other than the fact we're discussing another bonus point win for someone who's played against the Dragons. It was very underwhelming. We were very underpowered, albeit the one lad from Carmarthen Quins did get over and score himself a try, didn't he? Good on him from the maul, from a driving maul, so good on him there. But, what else is there to say? It's tough to be a Dragons fan at the moment. Again, listening to the lads earlier on the Dragons Lair, the likes of Garth and Claire and all, they have, the voice from the terrace. And you imagine renewing your season ticket or your membership for this season. It must be really painful for some of them to part with their cash. But what I will say is, in fairness, that the diehard do stick on the terrace, don't they? They have hung around in the Bisley stand and in the terrace to support the Dragons week in, week out. Attendances are still 4,000 plus every week, so good on them for hanging in there. And based on a couple of things we may discuss in on the news desk, then it's still looking up for the Dragons hopefully next year. But we've been optimistic before, haven't we?
And as Jamie says, it's the hope that will kill you.
It's the hope that he's right. It's the hope that kills you. And there's not much more to say really other than that, is there? It's a routine win for someone playing against the Dragons.
Well, yeah, I kind of watched the first half kind of in the background, and I was pottering around and doing stuff and making cups of tea and whatever. I sat down to watch the start of the second half, and I watched the first 10 minutes of it, and I'm like, how is the scoreboard where it is, where Dragons outplayed them for the first 10 minutes of the second half? Do you know what I mean? They genuinely outplayed them, and I don't know why they can't string that together for a full 80 minutes and actually put a decent score on the pitch, on the board. But
So with the Dragons, there's a couple of things that have been a problem this season. It was highlighted on Dragons Lair, but so since Philo Tiatia moved upstairs from defence coach to head coach, he's conceded a try bonus point in every single league game he's been in charge. They're on a run of 10, 10 consecutive games where they've conceded more than 30 points. The average points they concede a game is 35. The next worst in the league is Ulster with 28. That's a full converted try different. And it takes time for defensive systems to be bedded in. And they brought Philo in, and before they could bed that system in, they've pulled him out. Another issue is their attack. I mean, I know I've been talking about how bad Cardiff's attack is, but at least you can see what they're doing. They're not attacking rugby all the way. They seem to just be choosing their moments, get a penalty through defence, launch off a line out, see what they can do there. That seems to be the way Cardiff's doing it. Just short, sharp shots. Spend as little time as possible, because the more phases we go through, the more likely we are to cock it up. Problem is, we also cock our lineups up an awful lot. But Dragons, you don't see the shape. You don't know what. You don't know what Matt O'Brien's trying to do with that side. And I do think having this more senior coach, I don't know how good effective it is, but having someone with Philo who's been coaching a while, you're hoping that's going to help bring a little bit more experience in the squad. And at least if they can stop leaking so many points, takes the pressure off how many they've got to score.
We were. I mean, your internet decided to have a strop as well. That your internet was that disappointed with the Dragons' performance, Dan, that it went.
The internet's a Dragons fan as well. Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
the whole thing went then. Apologies.
Yeah, the name that keeps coming up on social media and everywhere else seems to be Matt O'Brien. He seems to be taking a lot of the flack for, and this is the bit that I don't understand. He flew home to play in the SRC Cup final on Sunday.
He did fly home. Yeah,
I just, it just says to me he's not. I can't say he's not committed to the role, because I don't know the guy. But you know what I mean? The appearance that it gives, the outward message that it gives is, I'm half foot in the camp, but I've got a half foot somewhere else, and I'm not 100% committed to anything. And it seems to be an issue for most fans. Dan, am I right on that? Or am I making stuff up off social media again?
No, I see lots and hear lots of things about the coaching staff at the Dragons. The last few times I've been on the show, I brought up the point that we've got a raft of young talent coming through. And even signing the likes of Bedall coming in, the under-20 skipper. We need to coach these lads properly. But this is when you're coming up with your game plan and you're coming up with a way that you want to play, this is not just, it's not just Matt O'Brien's idea, is it, that the backs are going to try and play a certain way? It's a whole coaching team effort. The vision and the ethos of the team's got to come from the head coach, because that's who's in place. So in this case, it's Philo Tiatia, and that's going to drop down. I would say that the attack was better at the start of the season when Di Flanagan was in place as well. And probably Di Flanagan, knowing that he's an ex-back quality coach himself, would have been able to think, was probably thinking to himself, well, look, we got Matt O'Brien coming in. He's an up-and-coming young coach. He does know his onions, but I can plug any gaps in his knowledge and upskill people where he may be unable to, and I can ultimately lead that vision. But I don't think Philo Tiatia, in terms of, and I don't know Philo, so I may be talking out of turn here, has got the same sort of attacking mindset that someone like Di Flanagan may have. So I don't know whether there was good succession planning there, because ultimately Philo's now had to do what Di Flanagan did when Dean Ryan left, and just take the reins and sail with it. He's not been able to bring in his own coaching team up until recently, when he signed the guy from North Harbour. So there are all these little things. Matt O'Brien, I think, is you look at the Dragons coaching staff, mind. You've got the likes of Tom Hancock, who's doing a bit in and around the academy. Sam Hobbs is in there. Matt O'Brien is in there. This is a young coaching staff, isn't it? They're all within their 30s. So, you imagine the amount of experience that they're gaining from this. And I don't just think we can hang Matt O'Brien out to dry on his own. Is he part of the problem? Maybe. But, you can't polish a turd, really, can you? Less, I look at, you go and put Matt O'Brien in charge of Ireland's backline or Leinster's backline, he's probably going to do okay. But you look at the backline that played on the weekend, heavily inexperienced, lacking a cutting edge, lacking anyone to get any sort of gain line, lacking a proper 10 or good, a proper quality 10. I think Tinas Tabia will help that. I think he was a good organizer from when I saw him play at Cardiff last season. He hasn't had much game time this year, but I think he's a good organizer, get a backline playing a bit more. And I just don't think it's solely Matt O'Brien's problem. I think our attack would have been better with Di Flanagan still in charge. You look how close we were at the start of the season. I know results didn't quite turn out the way he wanted them to, but we were much more competitive, weren't we, under Di Flanagan than we have been over the last 6 months. Just my opinion on that.
I'd like to see Di Flanagan come back as your backs coach, but that's just me talking crazy stuff,
Yeah, it's probably soured that relationship now, isn't it?
Yeah. Right. So I had a really slick segue just then, Dan, where you said about polishing turds, and I was about to go, okay, let's talk about the Ospreys, but you ruined it for me, man. You ruined it. So, Josh, you followed on from the Dragons. Now, I said this was going to be the most entertaining game of the weekend, and I think I was right, in all honesty. I mean, the conditions didn't look great, but what did you make of the game, mate?
Oh, unfortunately, all the excitement was taken out of it for me because I didn't get to watch it live. I had my own game I was playing, so I had to watch it back afterwards after I knew the score. But yeah, it's kind of felt a little bit like our season's gone a bit flat since we got knocked out of Europe. It feels like we've run out of steam a little bit, especially after we lost to Cardiff and we weren't going to make the playoffs. And then you've got a tough trip to South Africa ahead. So yeah, it's tough loss. I think I was looking at some of the stats and we missed 28 tackles and had a 75% tackle success rate. You're not going to win games if you're missing that many tackles, especially in South Africa, even though we did nearly win the game, admittedly. But yeah, even though some good individual performances, I thought Jack Welsh was brilliant. He's had a really good season for us. He sort of established himself above Max Nagy now, I'd say, as our first choice fullback. And he looks really good. I'm kind of glad we gave Jack the week off. It seems we had nothing to play for. Make sure he's fit for the Lions. I think nothing would have been worse than to see him go down injured. So, it gave Harry Deeves an opportunity. And I think it's exciting. A lot of exciting players on show. Will Griffiths comes back after a long injury layout. I thought he was brilliant. I've mentioned Deeves. Morse was superb. So that's a really strong young back row. And you've got players like Cian Hire coming off the bench, who, if anyone watched that BBC show, Rockstars, from a few years ago, he was on that. And he's a young 20-year-old tight head who looks really promising. So, yeah, even though we lost, to be honest, it gives me a lot of hope for, we'll come on to future discussions about next season, but it does give me some hope in terms of our player depth for next season. And I think similar to most of the regions, if we can keep players fit, yeah, it could be really, really exciting. Going forward.
So, like you said at the start, there was kind of a new coach bounce, if you like, that kind of, when you got knocked out of Europe, kind of the wind came out of the balloon. So, how do you reinflate that balloon now? Because, if it was just a new coach bounce, then you only get one crack at that, and then you've got to restart again. But there's a couple of young players coming through, but it just didn't seem to. It seemed to do that bit where there were whole sections in that game we go left, right, left, right, left, right, penalty, their ball, left, right, left, right, left, right, lose the ball. So, how do you reignite that bit that Mark Jones had when he first came in?
Yeah, I think it's difficult. I think you're always going to have that new manager bounce sort of thing when the new coach comes in. But also, I think the improvement in performances probably papered over some of the cracks that we had, if I'm honest. Even though results picked up straight away, I think it's quite difficult coming in as a new head coach. He has a very different philosophy to Toby Booth. And without having a full pre-season, it's really difficult to sort of get that across to the players and have that, see that change over the long term. So for me, once Mark Jones does have a full pre-season, I think he'll be able to, will look a lot more fluid, and he'll be able to coach that out of the boys. Because I agree, a lot of the time we do look very lateral, we do look very side to side. But again, it's quite, I put a lot of that down to running out of steam. I think none of the regional squads are strong enough to fight on two fronts. And we obviously prioritised the Challenge Cup because we had two home knockout games. So we obviously prioritised that. We rotated for Scarlets, lost that game heavily, which put us on the back foot for the URC. We then went into the Challenge Cup. We should have beaten Leon. In that knockout quarterfinal. So that was probably our biggest loss of the season. And then coming off the back of that, you're playing Cardiff, who have had a week off because you've had the European knockout game and they haven't. And then you lose that game, and then your season's done. And then it's how do you pick up your players after that? So I think emotionally, we're very much ready. It feels like we're very much ready for the end of the season now. Well, I do anyway.
Yeah.
Do you think as well that the reality is there's been one, Cardiff had an outside chance of making the playoffs, I suppose, which was extinguished. The week previously, Dragons and Ospreys didn't really have anything to play for. I think if we'd have played at home and we hadn't have had to have gone to South Africa, you could have bedded more academy boys and played more youth and boys at the borderline SRC in those games. But that becomes a pointless exercise if you're going to take all of those guys to South Africa, because you're just going to get absolutely whomped. Whereas if you're going to play home fixtures, you got the fact that the other team's traveling and you may be playing someone else where it's a bit of a dead rubber. For example, the Lions coming over to Wales. I think you'd stand more of a chance there of blooding some youngsters. Everyone's on about squad depth, but the way the fixtures have fallen for us, we played in South Africa at the end of last season as well, didn't we?
Yeah, not at the very end.
No,
and I think we didn't all go at the same time to that one because the Scarlets started.
Scarlets start. I quite like the idea of all four of us playing them at the same time. It kind of adds it's almost like a mini Welsh tour sort of thing.
Yeah, so and I don't dislike that. But I thought, to go over there at the end of the season it's a hard place to go when you're fully loaded, let alone when you've got a load of injuries, or in the Ospreys case, you've got very little to play for. Josh, exactly right. We'd all be devastated if, the likes of Jack Morgan got injured. It's just a bit of a shame, isn't it? Because we were in a position where you could have blooded a few youngsters at home, or, even if you were traveling to Scotland, maybe. But to go over there and do it would have been a pointless exercise. There you go.
Yeah. So the one other question I had for the Ospreys, Josh, was around recruitment. We'll do news desk and what have you in a minute, but it feels empty, recruitment for the Ospreys.
Yeah, I think they've definitely prioritised keeping the boys we already had. I think re-signing a Jack Morgan doesn't come cheap. Re-signing a Derry Lake doesn't come cheap. I think a lot of those boys, well, if their agents are any good, have had a big bump to their contracts. I think, I think Mark Jones in interview seems to have really prioritised keeping the players we have and really backing them. And we've only really brought players in when we've lost players. So we've obviously lost Adam Beard, but then we brought in Smith from Australia, who looks a really good player. I thought our recruitment last year hasn't really paid off. We haven't seen much of Thokna Singer, for example. I quite like the idea of backing the players we've got and really developing the players you've got, because if you bring players in, there's always the risk you've got a Funaki who I don't even know if he exists really. So yeah,
Mind blown.
Disastrous signing,
big on
really,
one in
wasn't it,
Europe.
Funaki? And he has turned out for Pontypool, actually.
oh,
All that money this season for 20 minutes down at Llandovery in the SRC.
Yeah, it's harsh. It is harsh. It's not easy for any of them. So okay, so I'll do the Scarlets bit then, which is probably the easiest one of the weekend because yes, we lost, but I actually thought we gave it a good show. We'd already qualified thanks to results going our way, so it wasn't a real edge on the match. If wasn't like we needed if we needed 1 point from 4 tries or whatever, or staying within the 7 points, So it did kind of release it a little bit for us, and it was all about just who are we going to play in the playoffs, and none of them are great options. I'll be honest with you. Do you want to play Leinster away? Do you want to play Glasgow away? Do you want to play the Bulls away? Or let me have a think here now. Let's see which one. But so yeah, from that point of view, it was good to see the boys actually go out and give it some oomph, because for a team that's finished, I think they finished third. Sharks finished third in the table or fourth in the table, something like that. The amount of World Cup winners they put on the pitch on Saturday. Our boys did not look out of place against them, and that's full credit to the boys and the coaching team. Where it would have been very easy to go, we've made it, let's sit back, let's not do anything, let's wrap ourselves in cotton wool and just hoof the ball. But they absolutely went out there and get it. I thought Costello was absolutely back on form. His drop goal. So I know so the referee gives a penalty. If you haven't seen this, it's just before halftime. Referee gives a penalty. He's on his right foot. The ball comes to his right foot. The play comes at him. He switches off his right foot onto his left foot and slots a drop goal from about 35,
on penalty
40
advantage.
meters. Yeah.
3-week ban. 3-week ban. If anyone who goes for a drop goal on penalty advantage, 3-week ban. Just no.
He's switched.
He
the point is,
he could have just taken the penalty.
Yeah, well, he was going to anyway,
20.
but he comes off the right foot and he switches to the left foot. I can't.
There you
do
go.
that
He can have 1 week mitigation. It's fine. It'll be a 2-week ban, but no.
Fair,
fundamentally against drop goals on penalty advantage. I will take your whole game ban being drop goals. Fine, but not on penalty advantage.
Cardiff probably do a bit more with that, Harley. They might because they don't get the 3 points from the penalty, so they may as well have a crack at the drop goal.
Well, no, we missed the drop goals as well. Did you not watch Sheedy trying to do one against Munster?
Yeah, but I thought Costello was outstanding. Joe Roberts was immense. Johnny Williams has played both games. We did take oh crap, what's his name? I've forgotten his name. Eddie James, thank you. We took Eddie James out there and made him sit and watch 2 games of rugby, which I don't understand, but to me it says that we really want to keep Johnny Williams, because he was absolutely. There were a couple of crash balls where you went into 2 props and it was a solid object and the immovable object. It was rock solid stuff. So, I think Fafita and Lousy up front just showed it. I said a couple of weeks ago, I thought Fafita had been a bit quiet. We hadn't seen much from him, and then bang, 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 here you go. Have some of that, son. Blair Murray was superb again. I think we butchered about 4 try scoring opportunities. So, and they all came from turnovers. They weren't necessarily structured play or whatever. So it was a little bit of luck. It was a little bit of maybe the bounce goes one way, maybe it goes the other. But we didn't look out of place with we did beat Leinster. We should have beaten Glasgow. We came close to beating the Sharks in all reality. So yeah, really, really good. I just want to give a shout out to Archie Hughes as well, who hasn't had much game time, has been up and down between SRC and senior squad, and I think Cordor has started every single game this season that we've played. And we did miss him. We did miss him. There were a couple of bits. Archie was a little bit nervous to start with, a little bit, which he's going to be. He's still a young scrum half and he's got big boots to fill. But, to be fair, he didn't shirk his responsibility. He had a couple of really good turnovers, which is not surprising because he's only a wee little diddy fella, and those big South Africans just couldn't reach down to pick him up, and he was in between their knees and ball over. Thank you very much. So, using his strengths and what have you. So, yeah, it wasn't an amazing game from him, but he showed why he's there, and he's growing. He still needs to put a bit of muscle on, particularly around the shoulders and the chest, because otherwise he's going to get absolutely battered. But yeah, he did well. Seeing as it's his first proper game, if you like, his first time he's come on with more than 20 minutes. I thought he played really, really well. So yeah, we've back in for an away trip to Leinster. Who knows? who
for
knows?
me, I think that's the trip. I think that's the trip because we've already beaten them once, albeit there was a changed team, and they have got the ability to choke. All the sensible money would be on Leinster. There's no doubt about it, and probably by a long way.
See, Dan, easy.
No, hey, look, we saw what they did in the Champions Cup, didn't they? To the likes of was it Harlequins or Leicester, and they've got the ability to go and score 50, 60, 70, but they've also got the ability to choke. So I think it's much better than you staring down the barrel of a trip to the Sharks. Oh, you don't want to go back out to South Africa or over to the Bulls or whatever it was. Don't want to go back over there. Glasgow's not so glamorous, is it? But at least going over
a good
to
night,
Leinster.
win or lose.
Good night in Dublin. My only concern for the Scarlets, I think, is you mentioned it just now, is that they butchered a couple of try scoring opportunities as they did the week before as well. So it shows that they're a bit like a striker that's getting plenty of chances, but just can't put the ball in the back of the net. At the kind of footballing term.
Yeah. Wayne Pivac, when he joined us and we started throwing silly passes and crazy passes and they weren't going to hand. And I remember the interview he gave on S4C. And he said, yeah, but the more we throw those passes, the more we create those chances, the more of them that are going to stick. And the more we get used to looking for stupid passes and looking for the stupid quick ball and all of that, the more we'll get used to catching it, and then we can build. So yeah, it's frustrating as hell. Both of my slippers went against the wall at one point. I'd thrown one of them, the dog hid, and then I'd only had my left foot left. So then we did something else, and that one went at the wall as well. So yeah, but you could only do what you could do, and I thought the boys played really, really well. And considering where we were not so long ago, after that Ospreys defeat at Christmas in the not Christmas derby, that was a real low point in the season. And since then we have really, we'd come close in so many games, and it just felt like, all right, it was starting to dip. And then we've come back in the new year and really given it some. So yeah, delighted for them. And I haven't broached the idea of a trip to Dublin with the wife. She has got friends over there. She's got friends in Dublin that we visited a couple of times. So maybe there might be another visit on the cards. I don't know. It depends how much of a good boy I am over the week, I guess, and then we can talk about it. But
no chance then.
Yeah. Let's keep it realistic. We got more chance of us hammering Leinster by 50 points than the chances of me getting over there.
It's
Right.
Champions Cup rugby as well, though, Lee, isn't it? Which is important.
Yeah, we were crap at that this year, I'll be honest. we didn't do really well at all. Right, let's move on to Prediction League then, Harley, because I mean there's only me and you here, and there's Nick and Jamie. So Dan and Josh, you're gonna have to pretend for a couple of minutes that you are Jamie and Nick, and you're gonna have to, put on your best acting hats and embody the reaction that you would expect from those two.
I'll be really disgruntled with you then.
you can start shouting and swearing at me now before Harley starts reading about Harley Prediction League. Yeah. Nick's got a couple of spare pairs, mate. Yeah, pop them on. Harley Prediction League.
So it was very close going into the last round. There's only 10 points between the top two, which is Jamie and Lee, and then Nick in fourth. So final standings, thanks to me being very pessimistic about Cardiff and not quite as pessimistic as Jamie about the Dragons, I've managed to suit it. But anyway, so fourth place is Nick, 142. Then Jamie and Lee are both tied on 149 league points, which means you go to total points variance.
Jamie beats me.
And Lee's total variance was 616 and Jamie's was 514. So because he was closer overall, in fact, he was actually the closest out of all of us to the actual scores. And then it was me on 531. So Jamie gets second, Lee on third, and I win on 152 points, which, as we discussed, we had to give our predictions independently. There was no gaming of the system.
I can confirm that everyone's predictions were sent in to me. Yes, so it was all done fairly and squarely, and there was no one able to say Dragons by one. So
Lee, I think Lee was tempted.
I was tempted.
It would not have gone very well for them, to be fair.
I was on WhatsApp and it was Lee was typing, Lee's not typing, Lee's typing, Lee's not typing. Oh, I was on the edge of my seat.
Oh man, fair play, Harley. I mean, yeah. Fair play to you. That's the second year in the trot now. You've won it.
I'd lost faith in it because I did have a really sticky middle part of the season. And I was the Scarlets of the prediction league, and Jamie was the Cardiff.
Does that make Nick the Dragons then? And that makes me the Ospreys. Bugger off. So we're not having that.
I was leaving it there. You filled in that game.
Right.
Yeah,
okay.
So that's the prediction league for another year. So can't wait for the three-peat next year.
Well done, chaps.
Yeah, you wait. Harley's gonna have all sorts of. There's gonna be Hall of Fame and stuff put up now. All sorts of stuff. Right. So we said last week that we were going to review our pre-season predictions this week. So because Jamie's not here, Nick's not here, and we've got bigger things to talk about, we're going to leave that one for next week, so we've got something to talk about next week, because it'll be a quiet week in Welsh rugby next week, I'm sure of it. But it does give us a little bit of a season's review to do on that one. So yeah, before we move on to other bits and bobs, so if you are liking what you are seeing and what you are hearing, then do please give us a like on social media. On our social media channel this week have gone absolutely crazy, obviously, with everything that's going on. So give us a like on social media, or subscribe to our YouTube channel, where you will see everything from WRRAP and associated family members, and you'll see lots of other bits and bobs, like our shorts, our instant reactions and things like that. So while I'm talking about the family, so the family is growing again next season. So we're talking a bit about doing an American pod, so the MLR. So that will be coming next season. We were talking about doing a more of a humor-based YouTube one, where we just look at stupid videos. So Stupid Rugby is coming next season. That'll just be a YouTube one, and it won't be every week. It'll be kind of maybe once a month or something like that. But Stupid Rugby is coming as well. So yeah, we are looking at we're looking at doing all sorts, and every time I open my mouth, I tell Hugh to tell me to shut up. So there's lots of potential that we've got. We could do a South African version of WRRAP, an Irish version of WRRAP. We could do, feeder pods for Irish sides, Scottish sides, South African sides. Basically, if you are watching as part of the wider family and you think I've got an idea for a pod and it's to do with rugby, drop us a line on that. And so thank you for John for sitting in last week and having a crack at it. John's gonna now join our Scarlets pod, saucepans and sidesteps. Probably not quite ready to do WRRAP yet because it can be a bit of a beast and a bit of an animal when you get your teeth into it. So if anybody else is interested in joining the WRRAP family as a Scarlet presenter on here, please come and take over from me. Just there's a load of other stuff that I need to be getting on with. And you've had 3 seasons of me. You must be bored of me by now. You cannot still be enjoying watching this. Shut up, Harley. So if anybody wants to join us next year, drop us a line because, I'll find space for you, especially if you're a Scarlets fan and you want to do WRRAP. So I got one more podcast thing before we move on to news, and that is, so I said a while ago that I was going to get a special offer every week, month, and I forgot last month. But so this month's special offer is, I should have chosen an easier website name to bloody pronounce, shouldn't I? afuracoffee.com. So they do like high-end coffee and what have you. AFUERA coffee.com. So you can get 15% off their stuff. And it's meant to be like really posh coffee. So if you like your coffee, stick around on social medias over the next couple of days. I'll post all the stuff. I'll post the website address and I'll post the discount codes. The discount code is rugby stuff. But it'll be all about how to order it and how to get all of that. So if you need a little bit of proper coffee to get through a couple of weeks of Welsh rugby, then that's the place to go because you can get it at a discount as well. Right, shut up then. So let's do a little bit of news desk then. Dan, it falls to you tonight, my friend. All yours.
No problem. So there is a little bit of news around Welsh rugby at the moment, just a little bit. So we'll start with a couple of departures. And my thanks to Jamie for teeing me up with a little bit of Dragons news. So Ashton Hewitt and Joe Davis are leaving the Dragons at the end of the season. Ashton put out on his social media a little while ago, didn't he, back before the last game, that he was going to be finishing. And the 30-year-old has made 131 appearances for the Dragons since 2013. And he's the club's leading second all-time try scorer with 37 over 11 seasons. So it's been a cracking stint for Mr. Hewitt, and I suppose not more importantly, but probably as important as his rugby is his quest for social justice and the work that he's done around racism in rugby and so on and so forth. And we've all seen some of the outrageous stuff that he receives on Twitter or X or whatever it is now. So, I hope he's remembered for both his on-field and off-field contribution, because they've been sizable, and he probably should have done more in terms of Wales, would it not have been for injury. And it was really, really unfortunate that the forward pass ruled out his try on the weekend. So we hope he finds another club, because he's not retiring, he's just finishing. And it's a pitch to him now. If you are looking for a club in pre-season, you can't find anywhere. Abbott Lady Rugby Club is a fantastic place to play. So you're more than welcome. Pre-season starts 17th of June. Disclaimer. Joe Davis also leaves Rodney Parade, having made 137 appearances in a 12-year stint at Rodney Parade. Really impressively, he was just 17 years old, making his debut against the Scarlets back in 2013. So there's another stalwart of the club that's leaving. And we wish him the very best. The man from Caldicott will be no more at the Dragons at the end of the year. On to signings, we'll stick with the Dragons, and the Dragons have signed Wyn Jones from Harlequins. 33-year-old has signed a 2-year deal, 48 test caps for Wales, 1 Lions test cap to add to that, and he's made 20 appearances for Harlequins this season. And personally, I don't know about you boys, but I think that's a decent signing. The Dragons, we can't deny it, the Dragons have done pretty well in the market so far, haven't they? So that's a Brucey bonus. I think that takes us up to 9, maybe. Don't quote me on that. 8 or 9 signatures. So Mr. Westwood Senior's obviously been a busy boy down at Rodney Parade over the last few weeks. So good on him. There's also news of a signing at the Scarlets, whereby they've signed 20-year-old fullback Owen Jones from Gloucester. I think that's a good signing. Not just a fullback, he can also cover the wing as well. So he'll be a good signing there, no doubt. I've seen a few clips of him over this week, and he's got the potential to be like another Tom Rogers, I think. So could be a good signing that for the Scarlets, Lee.
But strangely, he's Welsh qualified but played England under 21s.
He's not the only one, is he, this season that's done that sort of thing. The boy playing 8 has done the same for England and stuff. So this is where, and we'll discuss some of this sort of stuff later on.
Naughtiness in the academy contracts that I'm aware that I've heard about, where it basically says if England in the 20s come and ask for you, you've got to say yes.
And England,
if you sign an academy contract with one of the English Prem sides, England get first dibs.
Yeah, that's why Hathaway went as well, wasn't it? Hathaway.
So a load of them like that.
I got no doubt it's good for him. Well, both parties really. He's backing with us because his age profile suits as well, doesn't he? He's nice and young, and hopefully you'll have plenty of rugby out of young Owen Jones there. Staying with the Scarlets, they've signed a new kit deal with VX3, so Macron is no more, and VX3 are now coming in. And if you've got a sizable drum at the front, VX3 are much better for covering that than Macron, because those Italian lads are much slimmer than us Welsh boys. So everyone who's a triple XL and over is jumping for joy. They don't have to wear cling film to park a Scarlets anymore. So that's some good news there. There's a little bit of other. Go on.
To be honest, that's probably the best bit of signing news that the Scarlets have had so far this year. We've been on about this for a while, where people keep telling us how good Macron were, and we kept going, but I'm not seeing it. I'm not feeling it. So hopefully a chance to kind of invigorate the merchandise, just having something that isn't a shirt in the shop. Do you know what I mean? It's T-shirts, hats, scarves, whatever.
The VX3 stash is brilliant. I am envious of Dragons fans with the sort of stash they can get out of it.
I will stick up for Macron a little bit, because they do a great deal with community clubs. So basically, if you spend over 400 quid with them, you enter into their WRRAP community scheme, which is effectively buy one get one free, or 50% off your entire order over that amount. So if you're running a kids team or anything like that, like I did it for my boys under 10s team last year, we had something like $4,000 worth of kit for $2,000. So whilst they're not, the sizing is most definitely European, but they do a bit of work in the community for everybody else. So they do give back there. So I'll give them a little pat on the back for that one. But I'm with you down to Scarlets. Good on the VX3 stuff coming in. A little bit more news before we move on. Slightly outside of Wales, but Wales related. Lloyd Williams, I don't know whether you've seen that over the last couple of hours, have picked up another club. So he's moving from Ealing back to the newly formed Worcester Warriors. So Scrum Half has picked up a deal there. So that'll be interesting for everybody. Everybody involved there. I'd be really interested, based on everything that's going on in Wales that we'll discuss in a moment, how Worcester get on. With a financial model and everything else. So that'll be interesting there. Lee Halfpenny is due to leave Harlequins at the end of the season, and the current suitors are Bezier out in France, Pro D2, I believe. So that's where he's also fancy.
Well, isn't there also a thing with Matt Sharrett, who's been confirmed as head coach for Wales for the summer? He's very strongly said he wants Lee Halfpenny as his kicking coach. I don't know if that will affect his Pro D2 deal.
Well, we don't know. All I know for sure is that he's definitely leaving Quins, and maybe according to sources online, it's Bezier are the lead suitors at the moment, and the other Welsh international, British Lion fullback, currently looking for a club is Liam Williams, who was on another podcast recently, who came out asking for basically if there's anyone around looking for a fullback of international quality, he's the man. And I feel sorry for him a little bit because there's no doubt Sanjay's a quality player. However, his injury profile and age profile then to go along with the wage demands would probably not be good business for most clubs, especially those in Wales. Other news dropping in the last couple of hours is the Six Nations fixtures have been released. Bizarrely, the opening game is going to be on a Thursday evening and not a Friday evening, so it doesn't clash with the Winter Olympics, I've been reliably informed. But Wales open up away against England at Twickenham on the 7th. Then we host France before hosting Scotland, then Ireland. And they obviously think that we're in for a wooden spoon battle again because we host Italy at home in the final round of the Six Nations. So
just quickly talk about that fixture list because one thing to note is this is the first year we drop in one of the fallow weeks. So how, of course, we're the ones who have to deal with getting battered up by England, battered by France, and then a 6-day turnaround to have Scotland.
Yeah,
when we've
exactly.
got about it'll be the Scarlets Academy left. That they're the only people fit left in Wales.
Exactly that. And I suppose the last bit of minor news in Wales that is related purely to Welsh rugby, it was the SRC final on the weekend where, if in fairness to the Dragons region, we've had a good crack at the SRC this year. All three teams making the playoffs, including Pontypool and Evervale and Newport made the final. So I'd throw that in there just as a little sweetener for everyone within the region, and Newport run out winners over Evervale, 20 odd points to 18 or 19, I think, at Eugene Cross Park. So a great win for them to pick up their first domestic title for some time. And then the smallest little bit of news, really, that was dropped over the weekend, and I barely skimmed past it, to be honest. There's something floating around online that the union have served notice on two regions in Wales, both being the West Walian regions, the Ospreys and the Scarlets, and there's been a few counter punches thrown by said regions, and I suppose this is the point to open up the floor.
Yeah, and this is the point where Harley decides to go for it. Perfect timing, Harley. Perfect timing.
He's gone.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, let's talk about it, because for me, that statement, you can read that statement a couple of different ways, because it doesn't say we're getting rid of a team.
I don't think
that's the first. No, it doesn't say that we've had enough and we're getting rid of a team. It does say that we're going to redraw it. We've got 2 years to redraw up the contract. You pick your time in, Harley. Let's talk about the PRA. Oh, yeah, I just got to nip off.
I'm just going to turn my camera off so I can scramble behind me to get my charger out.
Yeah, so it doesn't say that we're dropping to 3. It says that we're going to renegotiate the agreement. And what happens in between is all sorts of up and down and in and out. The disappointing thing for me on this is that the WRU the WRU have been negotiating this contract for over 12 months. And in that 12 months, Cardiff have gone from, okay, we're great, the finances are great, to, I think we've got a problem. Oh dear, we've got a problem. Boys, we've really got a problem. And then, guys, you need to bail us out. Yeah. Through that period, they knew that there was an issue with Cardiff, and they didn't foresee that the WRU bailing out Cardiff might affect this agreement. Yeah. Where you've got effectively the owners signing a contract with themselves to be the same as everybody else. It just wasn't going to work. So I think the way the WRU have handled it has been really, really poor. To go from, I think the last statement from Abby Tierney was the 30th of April. 30th of April, so we got just over 2 weeks after to go from all 4 teams are ready to sign this contract and we're all good to go from there to we can't afford to continue the way we are. That's bollocks. And there's been a seismic shift in the finances of Wales. Bollocks there has. Whatever was there before, they knew about, and they were prepared to sign that document with all 4 clubs, and all 4 clubs were prepared to sign that document. It was just that the Cardiff thing popped up. There were some questions that need to be answered. And rather than sit down like a bunch of grown-ups and discuss it and go, right, let's have a chat about it, the WRU started getting all, you do this and you do that, otherwise you're out. And for me, to then not even tell the Ospreys and the Scarlets that this statement was coming out, but to tell Wales Online, to leak it to Wales Online instead of telling the 2 clubs that you're annoyed with and having a go with, just stinks of incompetence. Is how it is for me. And I was angry. It ruined Eurovision for me. It absolutely ruined the end of Eurovision. And then Sunday, crikey, I said to the wife, right, we're going to do some gardening on Sunday. And the phone started going. I went out, I mowed the lawn. And in the time it took me to mow the lawn, there was something like 300 messages on my phone between all the chat groups. Absolutely mental. So, yeah, I mean, you guys put your point forward on it. So Josh, you're the other one that's kind of in the we've not signed. So let's do the we've not signed first, and then we'll do the we've signed, and then we'll do the we had no choice but to sign. So you give us your point as an Osprey on this one, mate.
Yeah, well, I guess for me, what I want to say first is I'm a Welsh fan first and an Ospreys fan second. I want what's best for Welsh rugby, and that fundamentally is the most important thing. And I think all the stakeholders have different ambitions and different goals of what they want to get out of it. I think from the WRU's perspective, I think the elephant in the room is they were refinancing the NatWest loan. For me, without knowing details, because they don't, unfortunately, we don't get too many details. We get little snippets here and there, and you hear whisperings. Yeah. But that's the elephant in the room for me. And I think if the bank set a deadline, you're going to have to stick to that deadline. Now, from what Abby Turney has said before, they couldn't refinance that NatWest debt based off the old PRA agreement, because all profits that the WRU make after their spending would have to be delivered to all the regions, and NatWest didn't want that as a clause because they didn't think they'd maybe recoup their debt in as timely manner as they would have wanted. So if NatWest said, look, we'll refinance on good terms, but you need to sign a new PRA by X deadline, I'd have hoped that a competent CEO would have communicated that to all the regions and say, look, we need to get around the table and discuss this contract before this deadline, because without this, we can't refinance all the debt with NatWest, and it's going to have a massive impact on the finances going forward. Now, from the statements that have come out since, it doesn't appear that all the CEOs were aware of this, and that once that deadline passed, the door seems to be shut. When they've said they've delivered a statement that says, essentially they're not going to go back to a model where all 4 regions are funded equally. Now, in my positive hat on, I'm hoping that might be a case of, well, they now own Cardiff. So under the old PRA, you had to, the benefactors of the clubs had to basically prop up the clubs with an additional 2 million. Now, my opinion is it's best for Welsh rugby if WRU are the current owners of Cardiff, that they prop them up with the additional funding to keep them going. Because I don't think it's particularly good for Welsh rugby either if Cardiff are massively underfunded and they have to release players because their budget has suddenly gone down by X million because Helford Capital couldn't put up the money that they said they were going to put up. So I don't blame Cardiff at all either. When I look at the Dragons, I don't see any problem with them signing. I think David Buttress has done a fantastic job with the Dragons. He bought them back off the WIU for a cut price deal because of all the debt the Dragons had under them, even though they had good cash generating assets. But now under the new PRA, that sounds like most of that debt is taken back off the Dragons. So now the owners are just sitting on a nice cash generating asset. So for them, it's a great business. It's a great business deal. And also they're receiving additional funding. So I have no issue with the Dragons signing. I think each CEO and each owner has to do what's best for your own club. So I have no issue from their signing. From an Ospreys perspective now, it concerns me because we've got to move to St. Helens on the go. And we were going to rely on council funding in order to make that move to St. Helens happen. And for me, the council aren't going to give the I know Lance Bradley's come out and said, look, that's not under any sort of, that's not, that is going to go ahead. And the council have gave them assurances. I can't see the council going ahead if they're not sure if the Ospreys are going to exist in 2 years. They're not going to be able to potentially recoup their money. So, yeah, I'm concerned from that standpoint. There's got to be more to it that I don't know, because I can't see there must have been some serious worries around Cardiff and the funding they're going to receive for us not to have signed. Otherwise, yeah, I am now worried about my club existing going forward, and I'd rather my club existed, even if another club is getting slightly more funding, than didn't exist at all. So that's my concern. But I'm with you, Lee, that I don't like the way they've gone about it, leaking stories to Wales online. I hate that. Absolutely hate that. That's not how any decent organisation runs. And at best, it's bullying tactics. It's really underhand tactics to try and get someone to sign a contract. And it's exactly what we were working away from when Abby Tierney came in and went for the One Wales strategy and built these bridges. It just feels like they've knocked all those bridges down again. And for me, the trust is gone. So yeah, that's my take on it.
Yeah, we spoke about trust a lot before and the lack of it. So, okay, so there's the two that haven't signed. So Dan, you're unique in the sense that you were the one that chose to sign. So before I hand the floor over to you, not you personally, you wouldn't sign it personally, but you know what I mean. So before I hand the floor over to you, what I will say is that a lot of the stuff that's been thrown at Dragons and Dragon supporters on social media is bang out of order. And it's come from Scarlet supporters, it's come from Osprey supporters. For some reason, I saw some Harlequin supporters throwing shade at the Dragons as well today. I don't know what the hell that's about. But it's, for me, like Josh just said, you made the decision. It was right for you. That doesn't mean it's not. That doesn't mean it's right for everyone, but it was right for you, and you signed it. So, what's your take on it, mate?
Okay, so from a Dragons point of view, I think there's a couple of points to be made on it. First and foremost, I think from a Dragons perspective, it's important to remember that we were previously in union ownership, and funding wasn't great during that period. And for a large period of regional rugby, or rugby as it is now since it's changed, Dragons have never had major funding. Unlike, Mr. Cuddy at the Ospreys during the Galactico era, and there was obviously money put in by the Thomases down at Cardiff and so on and so forth. So the Dragons have never, ever been high rollers in terms of expenditure and funds coming into the club. So I think that's my first take on it. The second take on it is I fully understand that why everyone else jumps on the result. Ultimately it's a results-based business, and the Dragons have won enough fixtures over the last few seasons, have they? And in fact, this season they've been very, very poor, worst team in the league by a long stretch. But ultimately, as Josh said, Mr. Buttress has come in and steadied the ship. The club has been bought back. My understanding is it's pretty much debt-free now, if not completely debt-free. It owns Rodney Parade. And you can already see there's been things like the Bucks Super Rugby Grand Finals, both the men's and the women's, that have taken place there over the weekend. They had the entire Dragons Regions finals from youth down to under 12s held at Rodney Parade for over like a weekend's festival of rugby. So it's already starting to generate income. So that's a so for I think if you were Mr. Buttress, it's a no-brainer, isn't it? I think he's come out on X and said, look, ultimately my kids' inheritance are tied up in the Dragons now at the moment. I can't be leaving it. You know, we can't let it be. So it's purely a business decision for those guys now, isn't it? It's a out and out, cold hard business decision. So therefore, for a guy who's created and sold Just Eat and is chief executive of a massive company, then I think that's it's obviously a sound business move for him. So good on him. We've got this contract now, additional funding for 5 years. The region or the club is making money itself from finals days and so on and so forth. So, you know, go on the Dragons. And I said sort of tongue in cheek, was it last night or the night before in the WhatsApp group? I can't wait to see Anton Dupont roll out in a Dragons kit over the next couple of seasons when we're the high rollers of Welsh rugby. But obviously, it was said tongue in cheek. That's never going to happen. On a wider scale,
is it?
Or is it? You never
Or
ever
is
know.
it?
Watch this space. I'll be playing this on loop on my social medias if it comes true. Watch this. But the biggest thing for me in terms of the whole process is, I think you've touched on it in terms of trust, etc. The transparency from the union for me is absolutely shocking. The Cardiff situation, let's not forget, mind, the PRA had been touted out and sent out to clubs ages ago for everyone to have a look over, and they wanted people to sign early. They must have known the Cardiff situation when this was being sent out. And again, I'm not blaming Cardiff here because it's the investors that have done Cardiff's legs effectively, haven't they? Right? They were sold a pipe dream and it didn't come true. So the transparency from the union, I think they've been trying to push the PRA through, knowing that they really wanted to refinance. Ultimately, is Nat West that's wagging the dog here, not the WRU. Nat West, I would read in between the lines. They've got Welsh Rugby at the moment, Nat West, like that, because they know they want to refinance all the debt. They would have known Cardiff's financial situation when the PRA agreement was sent out. They've been pushing for it to be signed based on the fact that I think they were hoping for it to be signed prior to Cardiff going, and then Cardiff going, well, the deal was already signed and done and dusted by then. So they'd have just took it into ownership, and there'd have been a few moans and groans about it, but we would have just likely got on with it. So it's a transparency factor for me across this whole process. I think that stinks personally. They could have done it a lot better. But I genuinely do think that T&E, whenever I've heard her speak, I think they're trying to steady the ship a little bit. They are trying to refinance debt and so on and so forth. But the way they've gone about it in public is not very good, in my opinion. The transparency stinks. And on a personal note as well, I wholeheartedly hope, and I know lots of others in the Dragons region think the same as I do, that it stays at 4 regions. It has to stay at 4 regions. I don't think, based on the statement that was released, that they're going to get rid of one. I just think it's going to be a reduced funding in some way, shape, or form. It wouldn't surprise me, and I've got no evidence to back this up. It's just a gut feeling of mine that they're going to try and enter into a sort of Leinster era down in the capital city. Now they own the club, and try that on a sort of 1+3 model. With the Dragons obviously having signed the PRA, so maybe the PRA will stay for the Dragons as it was. Obviously, if you're because you think from the union's perspective, they've purchased a club that's got no assets. Cardiff doesn't own the arms park, so if you want to flog Cardiff, you've got to sell a top product, haven't you? I know you're going to make it such a good product where you've got to put some money into it, get results on the field, get some marquee players in at the club, make the infrastructure sound, build gyms, add to the medical side of it, sports nutrition, psychologists, blah, 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 blah. And then that's how you sell the club on at either at the break even or at a bit of a thing. But I think it's going to come at the financial cost end to colleagues in West Wales. And that's my 2 penny worth.
So before I flip over to Harley on this, so 2 points on that is the bit about Super Club in Cardiff has been mooted around a fair bit. I don't believe that that's the sticking point. It was the being treated fairly bit that was the sticking point. but the fact that they won't rule it out is that's the bit that kind of gives it traction. Then,
and what sort of adds a little bit more traction to it, I think, is the fact that Cardiff own nothing.
Yeah.
And I think that the nominal number was like someone to come in and spend 10 million quid on buying Cardiff. You have no assets to go with this. You just buy in, a club and the team and taking on their debt. Who's going to do that? I don't know. The union have come in and bailed them out. But I can't see anyone coming in. At least with the Dragons, they had Rodney Parade. The Scarlets. You'd have Parker Scarlets down there. When the Ospreys hopefully get a move to St Helens, if the same happened there, you have assets, but Cardiff unfortunately have nothing. And I don't know the sort of political elements and the business elements around Cardiff Athletic Club. But it seems a real shame because I don't know how you sell it on without investing some proper cash into it and making it, the top end capital city club that's constantly in the Champions Cup, constantly in playoffs, constantly making semi-finals or winning competitions. I don't see how you're going to sell it on.
Well, I think that was part of the problem as well. I think from what I read that the regions wanted assurances that Cardiff would be sold in the next couple of years. But if you put a 10 million valuation on a club with no cash generating assets, as you say, what are you buying? Are you buying the Cardiff name for 10 million? Premiership clubs, a lot of Premiership club owners can't give their clubs away for free. The only way to be a rich rugby club owner is to start off as a very rich rugby club owner. It's essentially just a plaything for rich people. It's not a way of making good money. It's not a good investment buying a rugby club, especially as you say, when you've got no assets. If you've got no assets, well, what are you selling? So, I can see the region's point of view on that one. That I can't see them getting a buyer if they're putting the valuation stupidly high.
And the other thing I will just add to this as well is going back to the stuff that I've seen on Twitter about, we'll see the union in court and so on and so forth. That's just complete nonsense, in my opinion, because if you think spending hundreds of thousands, if not into the millions of pounds in lawyer costs and court costs and back and forths and disclosures and all this with the union is a good idea, then it's not, because it's going to defund the union, it's going to defund every region. And if you think Welsh rugby is bad now, then if that starts happening, it's only going to get worse, because that the only people that must be saying that on Twitter or X must be lawyers, because they're the only ones that are going to win out of that situation. And I really hope that everyone sort of pulls together and go, look, we have to back something in Wales, don't we, for professional rugby? We have to back something. It has to be sustainable. All right, it's easy for me to say it in the Dragons region because we're signed up, but I kind of think, come on, let's get around the table, let's thrash it all out. We know Cardiff situation, they're owned. As we've been discussing, who's going to want to spend 10 million quid on something with no cash generating assets? So there's got to be a way out of it. But the only way out of it is if we all sit around the table and thrash it out like grown-ups, be transparent about it to the Welsh rugby public, because it's still the national sport and everyone really, really cares about it. You only got to look at the Super Rugby Cymru final. There was three and a bit thousand people over at Eugene Cross Park watch club rugby. People still care about rugby in Wales, and rightly so. It's our national sport. So I hope that everyone just pulls together and we get some sort of solution going into the new season, and we can draw a line under this whole this ugly matter.
So, Harley, you'll go in a second. So I'm just going to say that the thing about the Leinster model, the 1+3, the information I've got coming out of Ireland at the minute is not great around Leinster, and I think it won't. I think Ireland are holding off until after the Lions tour. But stuff is happening in Ireland as well. Obviously, we're a little bit away from it, so we just get rumours of rumours of rumours. But all is not happy in the Irish camp around the way Leinster works as well. So to go to a model that essentially isn't working doesn't make sense either. No. So Harley, you're in the unlucky position of not having a choice as to whether or not you sign or not. So we chose not to sign. Dan chose to sign. You didn't get a choice and you signed. And along with that came a whole load of shit on Twitter and Facebook and all of that sort of stuff. So the floor is yours, my friend. Off you go.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, just address the 10 million valuation, which point I was trying to say is, I personally, and a lot of my co-hosts in Cardiff Central Pod, we think that was just as the WRU don't want to get rid of it just yet, but we've got to put a number out there to say this is what it's going to cost you to take over. Because I think there's a lot of stuff that the WRU want out of this, including negotiating something out of Cardiff Athletic Club, because the WRU rely on access through CAC to get things like media vans in on match days. A lot of the infrastructure to the thing. You've got Grimlaw's Gap, which something that both Cardiff and the Union wanted to sort of change so that we can get that full third tier in that stadium. As for the thing with, the way I took it at face value quite naively with we won't have 4 equally funded regions is because under the new PRA things, if all 4 sign, either Cardiff are going to get more money from the Union because they're acting as a benefactor, or Cardiff are going to get a lot less money because to keep everyone happy and us only getting the same amount from the Union, they're going to have to purposely drop our budget so that they don't have to put in those benefactor contributions. So it's, and at that point, it's impossible to be fair. Because it's not fair if the Union put in more money than everyone else, but then equally, it's not fair if they don't fulfill their obligations as benefactors to top up the surplus. I mean, everyone talks about Cardiff being made into a super Leinster. I've got a feeling it's going to go the other way. I think it's going to be a bit like with the Dragons, where they purposely, they'll put the bare minimum in, and then if we haven't got enough money on top to get those extra signings, then we've just got to make do and hope our academy plugs through. One of the other things I've seen was about us poaching everyone's players. I mean, so far we've announced 2 players from other regions, and that's Johan Lloyd and George Knott. Both fantastic players, but Scarlets fans have spent the whole season saying we can take him now, starting from about Christmas time.
George Knott is giving him back either. He's yours. You've got him enough.
But I'd like to point out he was came through the Cardiff system before going off to Bristol. So and then you look at the players who have left or are reporting to leave Cardiff. So Thomas Young going. You've got Seb Davis. That's just the Dragons. Dane Blacker, former Cardiff person's going back to the Ospreys. Ellis Bevins linked with Scarlets. Evan Daniels linked with going to the Ospreys. We've got there's a couple more names I've already forgotten. If anything, the player drain's coming out of Cardiff at the moment. So I feel like those fears are sort of said in bad faith, and a lot of really negative language. I mean, particularly towards Dragons, which I think is completely unfounded. Like, it's not like they've bust a strike in the Union. They've made a business decision. Equally, I do get why Scarlets and Ospreys fans, and I know for a fact that Cardiff fans would be saying the exact same if it was one of the other 3. It just is because they were doing it when the Dragons were under Union ownership. Doesn't make me feel a little less sick seeing it constantly and making out as if it's our fault that some prick decided, yeah, I'm going to give you all this money. Oh no, I'm not going to give you any of my actual own personal money. No, it's all this sort of imaginary money I'm hoping to come in later. I mean, with that, I've heard rumours coming up about Cardiff's demise from non-Cardiff fans for quite a while. So I find it really hard to believe that the other regions didn't know as well. We're talking about the WRU knowing. I think the other region, the other CEOs knew whilst they were negotiating this, so they knew this might have been a problem. But the big thing is ultimately what triggered us going into administration was the WRU turning around as a ploy to get into administration so they could buy us up quickly. Was they said, we want our debt back. We want all our money. So they called in all that debt. And that was a point of we can't pay. So we had to go into administration. That was the trigger. And there's other things people forget. Dan made 2 point. We don't have any own assets. It's basically for us, it's our cash flow. It's whatever we can make on match days. and our money is sort of leasing out the Elms Park pitch for events and the like. We were in the black before COVID. Then the WRU give us this huge loan we're struggling to pay back. Peter Thomas sadly dies. We're still trying to get gate receipts back up, and that's sort of what sent us into sport. Much like a lot of the Premiership clubs that went bust. Our only lucky thing is that people our mortgage broker who's not paying us, was delaying payments to us. I think Tony on the pod basically said it's a bit like the bank taking your house because your employer hasn't paid your wages. And it's all right. Yeah, it's your fault for not paying your mortgage, but it's not exactly your fault your boss hasn't paid you. We've just ended up that sort of shit situation, and then now we've just got to say yes to whatever the WRU say because our board is 2 WRU employees.
And that's kind of, for me, that is part of the issue. Again, not Cardiff's fault for being where you are, but you've now got the WRU being the owner and the club. It's telling everybody what to do and being the club itself, and that kind of that throws a whole lot of extra issues into it that I cannot believe somebody further back down the line wouldn't have sat there and gone, hang on a second, guys, before we go into the meeting, can we have a little chat about this? Because this is basic stuff. This is really, really basic stuff that needs to be. You would hope that an organization of the size of the WRU would have been able to foresee, even with all the stuff that's going on and change arounds and leadership and all of this, this has been the most of this deal is being done by lawyers and financiers with a little bit of rugby input of how do we keep the rugby side happy, So they're not the people changing around at the top. They're the people that have been there and maybe part of the problem all the way through. I just, the way it's been handled just pisses me off, something chronic. And to do it, to announce it on the night where the Scarlets qualify for Europe, where you've got 1/4 of the country going, yeah, this is our turn, this is our day. Look at this, guys. Look, oh shit, no. Look at all the other stuff that's going on. Do you know what I mean? We didn't even get 24 hours to celebrate the fact that we'd achieved something. They didn't even wait until they got on the plane and got back into the bloody country before pulling the rug. It just
could have been a Monday morning thing, couldn't it?
Yeah,
This is
been
the
a
big
Monday
issue
morning.
with a lot of these announcements, though, is that they're all very, we're going to throw them out 10 o'clock on a Sunday night or 10:30 on a Saturday when they're hoping people aren't going to be looking for it. And
well, surely that's the time when everyone's on the phone, isn't it? Like between sort of 9:30 and 10:30 at night, you're sat on a sofa with a belly full of takeaway or whatever it is. You're scrolling through your phone and all the rest of it, and just doom scrolling. Oh, ping! Oh, what's this? The WRU notice, notification. Oh, yeah. It's naivety. The transparency, as we've said, has been absolutely shocking, and for me as well, it just hits home even more that. And maybe this is not for tonight's pod because we could go on for hours and hours and hours on it. But I'll die on this hill. Right, rugby's got a financial problem. I'm always banging on about inflated wages and all the rest of it. They've had 3 or 4 clubs go in England. We've had the Dragons and Cardiff go in recent years. The Australian Rugby Union have been cash strapped for years. If you watch the Super Rugby, I get up early in the morning, watch the Super Rugby. Australia particularly, there's barely anyone in the stands. Japanese rugby is just propped up by massive, multinational corporations like Toyota. The MLR have had clubs go, and France is a ticking time bomb because that's purely funded by, financiers and club owners and so on and so forth. So, World Rugby for me need to start stepping in and having a look at wider models on financing the game and so on and so forth. Because what's going to happen next? Like, when does this end? Say we sign some sort of deal now, and Cardiff come back out of ownership, and then all of a sudden the council down in Llanelli or Carmarthen go, oh, by the way, we need to recall all the debt for, Parker Scarlets, and we need it now. Oh, well, we can't afford to do that. Oh, then the Scarlets go.
Yeah,
it's just one disaster after another, isn't it? From an administrative point of view in rugby, and irrespective of what's gone on the field in recent years, or all the good stuff that's happened previously, it's just a complete disaster from an administration point of view, and it needs to change, and needs to change quickly.
But the thing for me now, right, is the players. We're losing sight of the game and the players in. We're talking about stuff off the field. So if you're a player now, right, and you've just signed a contract, let's say you've just signed a contract with the Scarlets, yeah. So the guy that's just come over from Gloucester, he's left Gloucester Premiership club, doing all right this year, good prospects. Yeah. Come and join the Scarlets because we've got this thing going where we produce back three players that just walk into the Welsh squad and should be on the Lions playing, but are too small. So come and join us and you'll be fine. And then, actually, we don't know if we're going to be here in 2 years. Sorry about that. But I know you gave up your perfectly, decent chance of making it in Gloucester to come down here. But we might not be around in 2 years. But give it a crack for 2 years. Have a go at it. See how it goes for 2 years. And we'll see if we can get you a contract somewhere else in 2 years. Yeah. How do you now get players to sign for clubs? Any of us in Wales? Because that agreement, if that agreement isn't signed by all four of us, effectively that agreement is null and void. I know that the union will say that no, that's not the way it works and all that, but effectively it was a 4-club agreement for all 4 clubs. So, how does anybody else go? In 2 years' time, the Dragons have signed now, so in 2 years' time, actually, you might be the feeder club, and you might just have under-20s in there. In 2 years' time, the Scarlets might be we might get moved to North Wales because of that. Do you know what I mean? How do you get players to come and join Welsh clubs now when nobody knows what's going to happen? Nobody's got the foggiest idea. On Friday morning, the Scarlets and Ospreys did not know that on Monday they would be sitting down with lawyers all day trying to work out how we go forward. And I know that that's what's happening today. I have a strong feeling that that's what happened a lot of Sunday. Yeah. So if we're in that, we don't know what's going to happen in 2 days' time or 3 days' time. How on earth are we going to be able to give contracts for players for 2 or 3 years? Who's buying a season ticket for a club that they don't know is going to exist in 2 years' time?
Who's going to invest in it, Lee? Who's going to invest in it long term? I'm hearing things like Newcastle Falcons are about to be taken over potentially by Red Bull. If you're Red Bull, you're not touching anyone in Wales here because you don't know who's going to be about.
Yeah.
Red Bull could have been lining up the Scarlets and going, oh, yeah, it's a great little project on the Scarlets, lovely ground, rich rugby history. Red matches the same colour as our name. Brilliant, perfect. Oh, hang on a minute. No, that's not for us now because we don't know who's going to be.
And it just kind of throws up so many questions that you just, like you said, you could literally wrap yourself around a cage all night. And this is what's happening on social media. If somebody will go, okay, well, what happens to the places in the URC? We're going to play this season, but then when we play next season, the winners of next season might go into the European Cup or they might not exist. Yeah. If you finish 8th next season in the URC, but the WRU might go, actually, no, you're not going to exist the season after. So what happens then? It baffles me I was unfortunate enough to be around in the 80s. I was unfortunate enough to watch rugby through the 80s, 90s, 2000s. None of this is any different. None of this is new. None of this is different from what we've been through before. Normally it's on the pitch. Normally we pull ourselves apart on the pitch, and then we look at what's happening off the pitch, and we trust the WRU to do stuff. And to me now, the clubs need to take control. All 4 clubs together need to go, right, okay, WRU can go in and audit any club at any time. Yeah, any club around the club. If you're enough WRU affiliated club, you can go in and audit the club. Our clubs need to go and audit the WRU. What are you doing? Who are you paying? How much? Where is the money? Yeah, because I do not accept a single word you are telling us about what's going on. So put it down on the paper, show me where that money's going. Show me who's being paid, what you're getting for it, where that money's going, and why you can't afford to run this union when you've got more income than the Irish and Scottish unions. Yeah. Why can we not run this club? Why can we not run this country properly on the money that we've got? And to me, a lot of that lies in the WRU. So it's, to me, the way out of this now, right, is you have a 2-stage agreement. You have a Cardiff in administration agreement, and then you have a Cardiff out of administration agreement. Okay, and whenever that happens, but you've got to make that Cardiff in administration agreement hard enough to pacify West Wales, and hard enough to make an incentive for Cardiff to go, do you know what, we need to get out of this as quick as we can. Yeah, and stuff the WRU. If the WRU don't like it, tough. Yeah, Cardiff have found a way out of it. This is what we're going to do. We got it. So you work absolutely every day. Somebody in that club is working solid every day to get investors in for one way or another. And whatever they need to do, they do it so that they get out of administration as soon as possible. And then when they're out of administration, here's your little dangly carrot. This is how life's going to be when we're outside of administration. Yeah. And it's that outside of administration bit that needs to be fair for all 4 clubs. Yeah. So it may well be that Cardiff have got to have a little bit more funding for a period of time to get out of administration. But during that time, it may well be, Harley, that you can't take players from any of the other Welsh clubs. Yeah. For that period. But then you go, right, okay, we need to get out of administration real quick. We've got a bit of extra funding to do stuff with our own players. We need to get out of administration quicker. And then we move on to that 4-club deal. Because if that's the bit that's holding it up, if the Cardiff being in administration is holding up all the rest of it, then they need to find a way around it. Like you said, Dan, they need to lock them in a room and create a little loop in the door and say, we'll chuck pizzas in there every 4 hours, but you're staying in there until something happens. And you're not coming out because this is too important.
So it's the only way it's going to be resolved. It's the only way it's going to be resolved. And it needs to be done, really, really early, because the longer this goes on, you're right, it's going to start hindering transfers, squad depth charts, all the rest of it now. Because if you're a player as well and someone comes in for you, you go in, oh, do I stay or do I go? What the last thing anyone wants is, going back to 2 years ago, where Cardiff got 2 or 3 players turning up on the opening day to training. No, no one on this pod wants, wants a uncompetitive Cardiff team. Far from it. We want 4 strong regions. I've said before, I hope at every home game for every region's absolutely packed. The kids are going in, the kids are buying shirts, shirt sales are through the roof. It baffles me that all the infighting in Wales has been going on since the WRU's existed, hasn't it? Or the weird internal infighting. But now it's not an amateur game anymore. It's multi-million-pound businesses and actual livelihoods at stake. So, some things drastically got to change. It's got to change quickly.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you on that the regions have to work together. But I do want to know what the Ospreys and Scarlets sticking points are, though, because you mentioned earlier if they want to put a clause in the contract that Cardiff can't take any of the Welsh regions players. I don't necessarily agree with that as a point. I'd say Scarlets, for example, could have 6 international centres on their books next year. Is that what's best for Welsh rugby, having potentially 4 international centres not playing, while Cardiff are playing 38-year-old Ray Lilo on that outside centre? I think I'd rather see Joe Roberts and Eddie James go on loan to Cardiff and actually get some games.
Don't say that to him. Oh, no.
Christ alive, man.
Or do you need Max
Oh.
Page, Johnny Williams,
There we
Eddie
go.
James,
There we go.
Joe Roberts? You know,
And
and
you send us Max Page.
Yeah.
And-
Yeah.
I said that. I mean, at least we've got a like-for-like replacement for Grady.
yeah, and similarly for the benefactor thing, if their sticking point is the fact that Cardiff are going to get more money because they are now Cardiff's benefactors, I also think that's a petty point. If I'm honest, I don't think it's best for Welsh rugby for Cardiff to be massively underfunded and have to release a load of players because they can no longer keep them in their contract. I want to see some collaboration between the regions and actually looking at what's best overall for Welsh rugby. And if that means that they're not equally funded in the short term while Cardiff are owned by the WRU, then personally, and people might not agree with this, I don't have a problem with that.
No, I think Josh makes a couple of good points there. And again, it comes down to the transparency thing in Welsh rugby, doesn't it? You know, both the Ospreys and the Scarlets have gone, oh, well, we're not happy with this. Well, which particular bits of the PRA are you not happy about? Why is this? Why is the is the PRA readily available for people to go and read? And where is it? Because I thought the union, was ultimately run by the clubs. It was a member. As a membership organisation, surely the clubs from the pro ones all the way down go, for purposes of transparency, this is what the PRA is going to look like. Actually, we're not happy with paragraphs, 4 through 5. So if we can get a remedy to those ones, then we're happy. Oh, okay, perfect. At least everyone knows what. But at the minute, everyone's up in arms with the union. But we don't actually know why really, because all they've said is we're not going to fund people the same way, and the lack of transparency has been rubbish. It'd be much better if they come out and said NatWest were playing funny buggers with us, and we need to drive this through. And on the other hand, then the Scarlets and the Ospreys have gone, well, we're unhappy because we haven't had certain guarantees. Well, which ones? Everyone's sort of just throwing things around, but the transparency is nowhere to be seen.
I think people are scared to say what their genuine issue is, to say what the genuine problem is. One, because of social media, and two, if you tell somebody what the problem is, there's that lack of trust. Well, they'll try and use that against us. Do you know what I mean? And that goes back years and years and years. That's not a current thing. That's a cultural thing that has been around in Welsh rugby for as long as I can remember, that nobody trusts anybody, but we'll all sit in a bar and have a good laugh and slag everybody else off. But actually they'll walk out and then go, don't trust him. He's dodgy as hell. And that's the way Welsh rugby has been for as long as I can remember. And it needs to change. And like you said, the only way to change it is to get everything out in the open and go, look,
absolutely.
We need to change the way it's run. We need to change the attitude of supporters. We need to change the attitude of clubs towards supporters. We just need, it's almost project reset. It's almost a project reset.
Yeah, it is. And I know other people have been banding around as well. Well, Abby Tierney's come out and said that, Cardiff will always be protected because, you need rugby in the capital city. Well, isn't that kind of obvious? You need some sort of club in, even if they wound Cardiff rugby as it was up and, give it another name. You're always going to have some sort of rugby in the capital city on. It's like the greatest rugby city in the world, isn't it? We've all been down there for international days. Everyone around the world loves coming to Cardiff. It's the same. I love the Dragons. I'm a Gwent man, but Rodney Parade's situated in Maindy and Newport. It's not the same as walking down Westgate Street and being able to go and get a pint easily outside and go and have a bite to eat beforehand and catch a train back and forth and all the rest of it. It's certainly not the same as going to the Liberty Stadium, is it? Which is out the town and all these other things. Come on, surely everyone can see that whatever happens in Welsh rugby, we need some sort of professional rugby side in Cardiff, whatever that looks like. Surely we need to have one.
And I don't think that I don't think that a region will go, and I think
No, I
that
don't.
I think that there will be conversations today and tomorrow, and at some point we'll get an announcement saying, "Okay, we've all sat around the table and everyone's happy to sign it." So the PRA is in effect from the start of next season. Off you go, lovely jubbly, and we'll just forget about it. And I don't think we can. I think when the WRU treats clubs like this, I don't think you can turn around and go, "Okay, we'll just forget about that. We'll forget about you saying that we're not going to exist. We'll put that to one side and carry on." I think we've got to have open and honest conversations and go, right, this is the way forward. So we could go on, go on, Haz.
One last thing. So because one of the things is because obviously there's been a load of mention of dropping regions, but actually, as we've already said on this pod, there's no mention of that in the statement. The whole dropping a region thing has come because it was leaked through Wales Online to a journalist who has a clear agenda that he wants 3 pro sites. And I think that again is skewing the narrative, is when you've got the media putting their own personal spin and they're not necessarily, well, it's impartial. I think Scrum 5s can be particularly bad about this, where guests and pundits you can hear a very personal agenda of what they think, one of which I think is just very anti-Welsh rugby in general.
I personally as well, there was one part of the statement that I read. I think it was the Wales Online thing. I put in the WhatsApp group. Wales doesn't have the the player base to support 4 clubs. Well, we did it previously. We had enough of a player base previously to get to 2 World Cup semi-finals, win 3 Grand Slams, was it 5, 6 Nations titles, get the number 1 in the world and be highly competitive week in, week out, winning tests against Australia, South Africa, and everyone else apart from the All Blacks. So it worked for a period then, didn't it? But the structure was different. We had a national academy, there was more money involved, all the rest of it. So it's not necessarily that it's a rinse and repeat job to go back there, but it did work previously with a better structure, in place in terms of academies and so on and so forth, and some extra financing, which it looks like we're trying to get back to. So to say that it doesn't work is complete nonsense to me, because it was only in 2019 when we were still winning test matches out in out in South Africa, yeah. And it was only in the last World Cup, mind, where we were getting through the quarter-final, having won every game in our pool, including beating a good Fiji side, Georgia and Australia. Welsh rugby supporters got a really short memory, haven't they?
I'm going with the academy things, because I think obviously a lot of our talk about, are you going to sign for the club on a 2-year deal? Are you going to sign in the academy? You don't know you're going to have an academy structure left on, and then that's even more of a lot. If you miss out on a player, in theory you can replace that in a couple of years. In theory, because usually can go. But you lose your academy, that can be 6, 7. That can be 6 to 10 years of development gone.
Yeah.
I mean, this part of the reason why the Welsh Leinster thing will never work is because we don't have private schools who are basically self-funded academies. But that's a discussion for another pod.
We're in the middle of right now. We're in the middle of the group of players that would have been coming through academy during COVID.
Yeah, we
Those
are.
are the players that would have been coming through now, and that's where we're struggling. Right, I'm going to wrap this up, gents, because we could carry on for quite some time, and I have a feeling we will revisit this at
I was just
some
about to
point
get a whiskey out so we could crack on.
Yeah. And a cigar.
behind me.
And a cigar, yeah.
So I'll finish by kind of reiterating what I said at the start. We're a fans podcast and we represent fans, and we try and do our best to we try and present a sensible, common sense kind of discussion. we've been able to have conversations with 4 different points of view from 4 different clubs tonight, and not a single one of us has shouted or slagged each other off or done anything other than give me a heart attack when you said Eddie James and Joe Roberts to Cardiff. Jesus Christ, that's going to live with me for a while, my friend. Yeah, but we do it with good humour and with the best of intentions that we can. We all love Welsh rugby, and we all want the very best for Welsh rugby. So when you're online, yeah, when you're looking at clickbait, when you're looking at Wales Online and all these places that make their money off you reading their story, just bear that in mind when you open that link. Just bear that in mind, that every time you open that link, you're feeding the monster on this one, okay? And sometimes you just kind of got to go, do you know what? I'm not going to get involved in this, and I'm going to park this to one side, because that's the stuff on social media has to stop. The stuff on social media, we have to come together as one, as a Welsh community, and go, this is how we go forward together. And once we do that, then we can go back to slagging each other off over dodgy referees on Boxing Day fixtures. It's fine then. That's fine, yeah. But let's get to that situation first. So I'm going to wrap this evening up by thanking you, Josh, for sitting in for Nick Budgie Smuggler this evening. It has been a pleasure. I hope you've enjoyed it, my friend. Dan, good to see you again, my friend. And I will definitely be seeing more of you next season as you take over from Jamie. So Jamie should be back next week. We'll kind of do a season review at some point and all of that. And then hopefully Dan will be with us as we do summer tours and pre-season and all of that, and a malarkey and all the fun bits. So I'm going to leave you on that one, gents. And as always, I shall bid you farewell and enjoy your rugby. Good night.
Good night.